Hello, good afternoon. It is time again for another episode of Never Punt, Never Parlay, one of your favorite college football shows. I'm your host, Parker Fleming, and I'm here, as always, as I will be every Tuesday from now into the end of the season and beyond, with my co-host and my friend, Douglas Farmer. Douglas, how are you today?
I would be better if I had done any better last week. 0-3 hurts. 0-3 hurts, but as I frequently remind myself, both in life and in gambling, the winningest pitcher in baseball history is the losingest pitcher in baseball history. Sometimes you're going to lose them. Sometimes you're going to go 0-3. Fortunately, you kept us off the schneid. You went 2-1, made me look a little bit better, made me feel a little bit better. But I'm here to redeem myself. Cy Young lost 316 games. Let's win some of the 511 this week.
Eternity begins anew each day, I like to say, and that's certainly true with gambling. We're under no obligation to be what our records were last week, but still doing pretty well on the season, and still 4-2 again this week could be on the table, and certainly am rooting for it. We've got some interesting plays here.
You know what? No,
our net
we're going
on the
5-1.
season. 5-1. We could go the distance. Absolutely. Our net on the season, 272 overall. Producer Jacob had that up there, 9.5% ROI. So even Douglas with an abysmal week, we are still cruising with positive value here. So lots of fun on that front. And of course, obviously the picks matter and we want to get the picks right, but we want to talk about the games. We want to understand the games and the angles as well. And we get to do that as well. Before we get into today, do want to make sure you're aware we are part of the Hammer, and Hit the Books HQ is the YouTube channel that we're on. We're sharing a show with them. You can subscribe to that on YouTube. You get Kanish, you get Powers, all that stuff there. Go ahead, if you're here in the comments, toss a like to us there. Helps the video out, helps our channel out, helps me and Douglas out specifically. And you got questions, you got best bets, hop in here. Let's hear from you. Would love to chat while we're on the show today too. So let's get all of that in there. And I'm just ignoring it. I'm just going past the signs that Douglas is hosting out. That's just a little nugget for those of you that are watching as opposed to the audio there. Let's go ahead, Douglas, and let's recap last week. Little bit of a rougher week. I was at 2-1. You were at 0-3. Not the worst in the world. A couple close ones there, and again, sometimes you're north of the line, sometimes you're south of the line. But there's a couple interesting games that I think we learned a whole lot about. First one we have to talk about: Ohio State, Notre Dame. What an amazing football game. What an absurd ending to a very, very good football game.
That would be an accurate description of that ending. It was a lot of fun. It's unfortunate the 10-man issue occurred because it's going to be how that game's remembered, and it should have been remembered for just how good of a game it was. And my biggest takeaway from it was these are two good physical defenses. Like, look out, folks. These defenses are not messing around. Notre Dame, aside from the 161-yard touchdown rush it allowed and that final drive, chaotic 65-yard game-winning drive, Notre Dame gave up 240 yards to Ohio State on 49 plays. That's less than 5 yards per play. And sure, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? But Parker, our American cousin was a commercial success. Notre Dame's defense did succeed on Saturday, except for, that final play where they had only 10 players.
Yeah, I think if I'm looking at this from a standpoint, not just records, I don't really care about playoff ramifications, all of that. Looking at it from a kind of handicapping perspective and a predictive perspective, Notre Dame outplayed Ohio State. But I do think that what I'm leaning towards is Notre Dame, something I want to circle, at the margin, at the most extreme margin, might have a little bit of a coaching disadvantage right now. That's not to say that they have a bad coaching staff or a coaching staff that doesn't know what they're doing, but we did see they didn't have 11 guys on the field after a timeout. They gave Ohio State a free timeout there. So maybe something that might be small, but something I have flagged. Additionally, I'm kind of thinking about Ohio State as a sleeping dragon that might have gotten awoken. Did really feel like that last drive for Ohio State was like, oh golly, let's take care of this. And so will that help them going forward in terms of maybe they've got a little bit of mojo? Maybe. I'm kind of leaning towards Ohio State playing a little bit better after this game as well.
I am not willing to grant that second point, partially because there was a dropped interception on that. Like, Kyle McCord made a heck of a throw on a 3rd and 19 to get Ohio State to the goal line. but he threw a ball to a defender earlier in the drive. It wasn't that great of a drive overall. Like, they made mistakes on it. They just got kind of lucky. As for Notre Dame's coaching, it's going to be real curious to look this week. They're going to a top 20 team. They're going to a national primetime game again. They're going to ESPN College Game Day again. Is there going to be a hangover at Duke, or can the coaching staff protect against that? They couldn't last year after Notre Dame lost to Ohio State, and now they're facing a team that's a lot better than Marshall. Riley Leonard is not a quarterback you want to be hungover, figuratively or literally, going up against.
No, a real live quarterback, and Notre Dame's going to have to play 2 difficult games back to back. That's certainly something to look at. I think if this was not the primetime game, if this was a like 11 a.m. kickoff in North Carolina, then we'd be talking about a different kind of hangover. But I think they'll get a lot more of a rebound here, even though I do think Riley Leonard presents a sufficiently different challenge for Notre Dame than Ohio State did last week. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of the back-to-back. The preparation matters as well. Oregon 42, Colorado 6. Do I have any comments? I don't have any comments.
I had a running sheet of notes on Saturday of things to circle back on, things to check on. And my running note on that was, we're going to laugh at Colorado, but this does say something about Oregon. Like, let's give a little bit of credit to straight Oregon rather than just knocking Colorado. Dan Lanning took a page out of Kirby Smart's pregame playbook, getting that team focused. The 2 a.m. and it was like midnight Eastern highlight video they dropped last night of Oregon's players just ignoring Colorado's trash talk and then doing the thing. It was all right out of the Georgia playbook, and that starts to make you think Dan Lanning took the right lessons away from Kirby Smart. There could be something cooking in Oregon, be it this year or in the next couple of years. After that, we moved to another game where I didn't have a...
You're great. I think I lagged again. My bad there. I was just going to say, we've seen like the Bo Nix billboards in Dallas and the Heisman, all of that nonsense. Oregon clearly knows what they're doing in terms of the PR and the narrative and all as well. And it's good to see. I was interested to see if they could actually like ramp it up and dial it in. I had the suspicion that they would be doing that. And yeah, I think Oregon is for real. Not that winning against Colorado certainly moved the needle there, but more so to say, I think that they kind of have the foundation, and the coaching clearly knows what they're doing in terms of national competition. I'm interested in Oregon moving forward.
And then after that, we get to Alabama, Mississippi. Alabama wins by 2 touchdowns. We should, 1, kind of laugh at Lane Kiffin, and 2, you're going to start feeling better about Alabama, even though I am still skeptical. I'm not sold on Alabama's offensive line. It's given up 16 sacks this season, Parker, including 4 to Mississippi, and it's not like Mississippi's known for an excellent defensive front. I think that could be a problem when LSU or Texas A&M show up on the schedule.
It could be. The way that I'm trying to think of it is, I pulled stats for offensive line continuity today and just pulled the top 10. Continuity being how distributed were your offensive line snaps, not including tight ends, anything else, just your 5 offensive linemen. And Alabama was 10th in the nation, most concentrated, which means the fewest people have taken snaps, which with an O-line is generally going to be a good thing. They have some younger guys there. What I potentially would believe with that is that there's a learning curve, and they are going to improve and continue to improve over the course of the season, conditional on them being able to keep that continuity high. Maybe small at the margin or whatever, but I thought about that offensive line as well. And the continuity, I think, is a good thing. It's not like they're flailing, trying to put guys out there and figuring out, or they have injuries. We should expect some positive regression from the Alabama offensive line.
He's absolutely logic. I apply every football season. I generally apply it more to the running game than the pass blocking game. In my head, running blocks, it's more of a tag team effort, whereas pass blocking, it's more often, not always, more often you got to pick up your guy on your own. It's more of an individual, not always, but more often. It's something to keep an eye on. You have a very logical point there, but 16 sacks through 4 games, 5 against Texas, 5 against South Florida, 4 against Mississippi. That's not sustainable. And if that doesn't get fixed, if it doesn't gel, I look at sacks as like 2/3 of a turnover sometimes. Going up against LSU and Texas A&M, Jalen Milroe getting taken down the backfield will serve as drive killers and give LSU's offense a chance. Something for us to keep an eye on.
Especially with the kind of multiplicative effect of, we've seen when the Milroe offense is working, 3rd and long is not a part of it, right? And sacks are how you get Milroe in 3rd and long, and 3rd and Milroe is not where you want to be. So definitely that the multiplicative effect of the offensive line there is huge. Yeah, we're coining 3rd and Milroe. Absolutely. Write that one down.
Yep. Making a note of that. 3rd and Milrow. Literally writing it down. Got it.
The other game I wanted to cover very, very quickly. I know that you were duties elsewhere, so I don't even know that you got to watch this one. Washington State 38, nope. Oregon State 35. This was not as close as the score. Oregon State made a late fourth quarter push. Washington State's offense is damn impressive. I think their depth on defense is a little thin. When Oregon State picked up the pace at the end and was trying to make a push, they struggled a little bit, and legitimately almost did come back. But man, Washington State's offense is for real and really, really impressed there.
I will take your word for it. When Notre Dame is in that close of a game and I am doing my day job, I'm not going to get enough eyes elsewhere. Yep. I tried to have a few games on during the first half. Appalachian State, Wyoming, I'll touch on later. Yes, that was on one of my auxiliary screens. Oregon State, Washington State never quite got under my radar.
Yeah, I think that not enough for me to bet against Oregon State this weekend. That I was certainly interested in the fact that Washington State just put up a really big lead on them. I think a lot of Oregon State's defense, and so very impressive from Washington State. Another game, well, let's talk about a couple that had ramifications with our futures. Speaking of teams that are real, do you know who is alive and breathing and a gosh dang real football team? The Penn State Nittany Lions. 31-0 against Iowa. The nothing is not impressive.
My top line note is Penn State, I believe. It's that simple. They looked so good. And it was one of those moments where I was impressed by Drew Aller's maturity in not forcing the issue. 25 of 37 for 166 yards. He just took what Iowa gave him. Iowa's not going to give you much, but if that's all you take, you're going to find some success. I was so impressed. No part of Penn State's offense exploded, yet they still just dominate. They out-Iowa'd Iowa.
Yeah, the 0 is not as impressive to me as the 31 against Iowa there. Just a drubbing, just a beat down, just physicality on both sides of the ball. And yeah, they out-Iowa'd Iowa. I still had that as plus 600 to win the Big Ten earlier this season or early in our offseason. So feeling pretty okay about that future. Again, really just need a split between Ohio State and Michigan and some help there. But I think, man, they look very, very solid, very, very complete. Let's go over to Pac-12. We both have a future about Utah. They got a Dante Moore pick six on the first play of the game and then just played a draw for the rest of the game for UCLA. And I think Kyle Whittingham is very okay with that. Yeah.
Now they did more than play to a draw. Like Carson Steele had 11 carries for 29 yards. Dante Moore completed 15 out of 35 passes. When your defense is playing that well, you can afford to punt 6 times in the second half. I think I wrote down, let's see here. They had 6 drives, 25 plays for Utah in the second half. They didn't even try. They knew they were up 2 touchdowns until the closing minutes, and they go, whatever, we're playing a backup quarterback. We're at home. Let's just cruise it out at 14-0. Dante Moore, I couldn't really draw any conclusions off him because he made that mistake, and then he led a late touchdown drive. But the mistake allowed for the late touchdown drive effectively because Utah could pull up that much. That was a game where I just was happy to take it. I'm sitting with that Utah national championship future of 125-1. You're sitting with that Utah plus 700 to win the Pac-12. I don't care how they win. I just want them to keep winning.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that they kind of have the energy of like, I'm like going to pull you down into the pool and then drown you. And I might drown a little bit too, but I'm going to drown you more than I get drowned. That's like, they just are able to just get you in the mud. It is impressive. I bet like, obviously they want Cam Rising back. Obviously they'd like to score more points. I think Kyle Whittingham loves this team. I bet this is one of his favorite Utah teams just because they're so frustrating. They're so frustrating for opponents there.
It's a really good thing. Thoughts like that aren't recorded and put in the public sphere for posterity. Oh boy, we might be getting some interesting phone calls from the FBI this week. You might be getting some interesting phone calls from the FBI this week.
They could get in line. Going to some games of the week and looking forward, Utah does go to Oregon State. Oregon State minus 3.5 point favorites. Cam Rising is going to play next week. It's kind of like the bar has the sign free beer tomorrow. That's what we keep hearing. Cam Rising next week. I don't know when he's coming back. Maybe they're going to wait for the bye at this point. There's going to be a lot of running in this game. Very, very, very beefy. Has moved from 3 to 3.5. and the total is down from 45 to 44 this week. What are you thinking about this game, Douglas? Today, excuse me.
Well,
Yeah.
I will admit a personal family. When this opened with Utah as a 1-point underdog, I took that just banking on it's going to jump to Utah being favored by 1-3 once Cam Rising's in. And this line movement makes it clear that for the second week in a row, the market doesn't. The books expected him back, the market doesn't. So I'm sitting on a bad ticket there, and it was me just trying to outsmart the system without Cam Rising. This is going to become so run heavy. I looked at your rush rate over expected numbers. Do you realize that Utah is running more than 124 other teams in the country when you consider game state? Rush rate over expected by 10.8%. And then there's Oregon State, who's only 77th in that regard, but they still run the ball nearly 56% of the time. The difference there is Oregon State gets themselves into positions where you expect them to run. So they just keep running because that's all their offense really is. Running this game might not have 50 pass attempts, which is why that total is down to 44.5, because pretty soon here it's going to get to 42. Like, it's going to keep falling because the idea of 60, 70 rushes is just going to kill a total.
And those rush numbers are this season now adjusted for scrambles and design runs. So that's only design runs above expected. With Nate Johnson has scrambled a little bit, might have influenced those numbers a little bit in the past, but that is just design runs. So super, super beefy rushing performance. And they're probably running a little bit more because some of their passes are not working out and they're getting scrambles there. So yeah, I expect that to be just a rock fight of a game. And love that it is on a Friday. I'll get to watch all of it with my attention undeterred. Another pretty hefty one. LSU goes to Mississippi. This is kind of do or die for both teams. If LSU, I guess if Mississippi wins, LSU's not technically out, but it kind of feels like it. They're behind the 8 ball. If LSU wins, Mississippi's out entirely here. I have this as just a slight edge towards Mississippi, which shocked me when the numbers came out this morning.
Did you look at it? It shocked you, so I am going to assume you looked at it and tried to assess where that surprise originated. Did you land on a specific spot that is the reason for that shift?
Yep, this LSU defense is pretty problematic here. 86th in defensive EPA per play. They're 83rd in success rate allowed. And one thing that really, really stands out, an area where Ole Miss is not very good on offense is 3rd and 4th downs. Very good at early downs EPA, 36, but they're 98th in 3rd and 4th down success. LSU is allowing 52.4% conversion rate on 3rd and 4th down. That's when you add those 3rd and 4th downs together. So that one gives Mississippi a ton of opportunity to extend drives and maybe clean up if they can't get that early downs EPA, but they're so explosive early. I think they're just going to be able to score in this LSU offense. We see that currently -2.5 some places, -3 for LSU there. I am a little bit distrusting of these numbers, but man, if you can get the Rebels with plus money, that seems like a pretty decent bet here, given that I have them favored.
I agree with the value thought there. It's very rare that I will see you have something and then I will distinctly go like sometimes it talks me out of something. It very rarely will sit there and I still go against it. LSU's offense is the best unit on the field. His defense might be a weak spot, but LSU's offense is, in my opinion, by far the best unit on the field in that game. So I kind of want to put a little faith in them. I'm not on that game yet, but I have a little bit more faith in LSU's offense just to outscore Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, especially there is a pretty good trend, and I don't have the number offhand, but the week after Alabama does not go well for anyone the last couple of years in college football, and so there's something to that as well. That angle, and again, I like angles, I like numbers, so don't have a play there for that one, but was interested in that number. All right. Look at that. Just under 20 minutes, we get through the recap and we're here. We're ready to get some free plays, some picks that we have. Again, 2-1 for me last week, 0-3 for Douglas, not to rub his face in it, but just because we are transparent and hoping we're going to
calling you handsome. And you got to do that to me. Telling the world, isn't Parker handsome? Hey, Douglas went 0-3 last week.
But that being said, Douglas, go ahead and start us off. You briefly mentioned this team earlier, and you've got a play to kick us off here.
If you want me to go into Appalachian State, I will. But then after that, we need to discuss your weekday plans. You were saying you're going to have all your attention on Utah, and I'm looking at your picks. I know your Friday night's going to be kind of busy, but I will start off with Appalachian State. They were on my screen in the press box because I had personal money on Appalachian State, and they gave it away. They were up 5 points, looking to kick a field goal with 2 minutes to go. Wyoming blocks it, runs it back for a touchdown, and then Appalachian State puts together a drive to go redeem it, and it throws an interception on that drive. Just it I'm going to call it a bad beat. And sometimes you got to look at a bad beat and find the silver lining. The silver lining is the value might present itself the next week. Somebody like Appalachian State, your numbers theoretically adjust for the bad beat. They look at the yardage, they look at success rates, they look at everything. But you know what? They still have to acknowledge the things that happened. That blocked field goal is still somewhere in the numbers. That interception on a promising drive is still somewhere in the numbers. And that's where I can find a little bit of value. You add in the fact that they held Wyoming to 208 yards. Appalachian State had 6 quality drives. Wyoming had 1. Appalachian State, by that math, controlled 86% of this game. Appalachian State should have won. I'm seeing value moving forward. They're favored by only 13.5 at Louisiana Monroe. I think that number was available at, let's see here, FanDuel, Caesars, and MGM before we went live. 13.5 at Louisiana Monroe. And I look at it and I think Appalachian State's got a good running back in Nate Noel. It's going to get at least 100 yards. They're now back at home. There's a worry that they're going to lose focus after that bad of a beat. Well, they're at home and it's a conference game. It's time to refocus. They're going to run the ball against Louisiana Monroe. They run the ball 5.8% more than would be expected, which is in the top 25 in the country. And that's enough to run it down Louisiana Monroe's throat. Louisiana Monroe runs the ball even more. That's because its offense can't do anything. And that might sound harsh, but it's a reality. Louisiana Monroe's offense would be outscored by maybe not most, a good number of Texas high school offenses. That gives me enough incentive to believe in Appalachian State to redeem itself, cover that less than 2 touchdown spread on the back of a strong running game at home.
I like it. Big disparity there. App State, 14th in echo ratio. They control 65.9% of the quality possessions in a game. Louisiana Monroe, 37%. That's 124th in the nation. So if football is a game of opportunity creation, App State certainly has a huge edge here. I like that play. I was actually on the other side, on the Wyoming side, and an over. So lost the over, just so close. And did absolutely got the push there, recognized it was the wrong side. That was one of those where I said, count this as an L regardless. Glad to get out of it even and square. Another G5 game where I believe there is a pretty big mismatch between quality of opponents here. Jacksonville State goes to Sam Houston on Thursday. There's some weeknight action for you. I like Jacksonville State -6.5, -110 at Caesars right now. Jacksonville State, 18th in echo ratio. Sam Houston State, 133rd. Talk about offenses that could be outscored by high school teams. Sam Houston State is 133rd in offensive EPA per play. Dead last in passing, dead last in rushing, dead last in echo rate.
Parker, there are only 133 teams in college football. Are you telling me that Sam Houston State is the worst in the country at success rate on offense?
Absolutely. At success rates, no, they're 132. They're 133 in EPA.
Good for them.
Play. 132 in success rate. So not all negatives there. The defense, decent against the pass, kind of so-so at opportunity creation, 73rd in echo rate, 73rd in points per echo. What I really like about this is Jacksonville State experimenting with quarterbacks, being able to say, hey, we like Webb, but with Smothers, we get a little bit more mobility. They're running the ball really, really well. Both of these teams are running a ton, 127th in rush rate over expected for Jack State. Sam Houston State, 117th in rush rate over expected. So heavy run game. Expect a lot of 3 and outs against Sam Houston. I think Sam Houston's defense has been highly regarded this season. I actually have Jacksonville State's slightly better just by the numbers when we adjust for opponent and look at the efficiency here. So not a lot of scoring from Sam Houston State. Jack State's going to get theirs. Go ahead and give me the Gamecocks -6.5. We're betting on Rich Rod again, and I don't hate it.
I don't have a huge take on that, but you just said something that has me curious about your next play. You are implying that Sam Houston State's defense, while good, it's somewhat inflated by its opponents. Well, one of those opponents that I believe it held to 14 points is somebody you want to put money on now. So if you're telling me that BYU, spoiler, BYU's offense is not that good, that's why Sam Houston State's defense is well regarded. Why are you about to turn around, distract yourself from the Utah game on Friday night, and put money on BYU?
It's a great question. I think there's two things that really stand out here. One, do you know the last time that Cincinnati has played at altitude?
Um, uh, oh God. Hey, let's. I'm trying to rattle off. They don't play in California very often. I'm assuming they don't play in Colorado. Yeah, I've got somewhere in the Appalachians.
I don't know because I gave up and got bored and stopped looking because in the last 4 seasons, they haven't played anywhere with this kind of altitude. I think Cincinnati got entirely overblown, overrated by a win against a Pitt team that we have seen is abysmal. And by Emory Jones with his arm cannon blowing out an FCS team. I had Cincinnati very, very lowly power rated this season. I think the only thing that they have going for them is their defensive line is legitimately very, very good. Rest of the team and super flawed. You can see how that line stands out in the pass and rush split on defense for Cincinnati. 108th in EPA per pass, 5th in EPA per rush. So BYU passing more often than they're rushing, 4.2 percentage points less than average for that rush rate over expected. That's 47th in the nation, and they're decently efficient. I think the flip side of this is Cincinnati is running a lot more on offense, 1.4 percentage points more than average at 76th. And BYU's defense is 29th EPA per pass, 8th in EPA per rush. Very, very strong. One stat that really, really pushes this in BYU's direction for me, 3rd and 4th down success. Cincinnati's offense is 101st on late downs. BYU's defense is currently 2nd overall, doing quite well in those 3rd and 4th down situations. I am low on Cincinnati. I think they're a little overrated. I think that plus the combination of altitude, I like the Cougars here. I'm going with it.
Well, you never actually said the number. You're getting BYU by
minus
a point at Bet Rivers.
Minus 110. Yep, absolutely. I have this BYU by 4, entirely, and I am low on BYU.
And this line was 2.5 an hour and a half ago, which is a little worrisome. What do we not know? But I suspect it's just a market mistake. My notes on this game, which I was considering, and I will end up on in various ways this week. I agree with you entirely. My 3 notes were Cincinnati is bad, which you mentioned, Pittsburgh boost, which you mentioned, and home field advantage. That altitude I wrote down, that's 4,551 feet above sea level. I don't know what Cincinnati itself is at, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the 2, 3, 400s, given its proximity to the Great Lakes. I will very much agree with you on this, especially that number moves toward us. We're at BYU at a pick 'em at home. I'm comfortable with that.
Yep, I like it. First Big 12 meeting between the two of them here, and just makes some sense. A little more constancy out of BYU's offense, and even against Kansas. I mean, Kansas super super explosive, but I think BYU is kind of in the situation of doing enough to keep themselves in games. And at home here, I like that. A couple, good. Okay showing. They kind of got outplayed, but took advantage of some mistakes at Arkansas. And then Kansas last week on the road, don't love it. So at home, I think we got a BYU get right game here. What's your next play?
I'm going to stay in the Big 12. I'm going to go with a team that is 4-0 against the spread. They're covering the spread by an average of more than 2 touchdowns. Vegas has not caught up to how good this team is. And when that number is as much as 2 touchdowns covering the spread by an average of, it's not going to catch up anytime soon. And then hat tip to a Hammer contributor, John Fendler. He got me looking at this. Iowa State's offensive success rate is not on a fair footing with its points per scoring opportunities. It is doing far more scoring than it should, given its abysmal success rate. That's not sustainable. That's going to come back to reality. And against an Oklahoma defense, Iowa State puts together a quality drive less often than 118 other teams in the country. Oklahoma's defense gives up quality drives very rarely. Even more rarely, Oklahoma giving up points on those quality drives. Opponents have scored 1.5 points per quality drive against Oklahoma. That is remarkable. That's not going to be sustainable, but that general trend, it's going to stay below 3 for a long while. I am, as much as I'm going to bet Oklahoma by 19 against Iowa State, number that's available at Neg 109 at Bet Rivers. As much as I'm going to bet that, later in the week, I'm going to be looking for an Iowa State team total at 14.5 or 14 or 14.5 the numbers I'm hoping to get. Frankly, 13.5 is probably safe. Oklahoma's defense should win this game more than anything else. Very much on Oklahoma there. As long as that stays under 3 touchdowns, I'm comfortable with that overall spread.
Oklahoma's defense should win this game. What a time to be alive. The only thing that makes me nervous, because I agree with the numbers, I think, and I have it like that, since 2016, when Matt Campbell came to Ames, 34-24, 31-38, 37-27, 42-41, 30-37, 27-21, 28-21, 27-13 last year, and that was a blowout by standards of this game. Seems like sometimes there is some stuff in the water there, but hopefully Norman and the Sooners at home will be able to exercise some demons against Iowa State in a matchup that's been pretty feisty the last couple of years. You've got one more.
Fair worry.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
That's a fair worry, but I'm starting to think the Matt Campbell situation might just be untenable, and he might know that. Was it the Iowa game or one before that where he got after it when a fan yelled at him that you're on the hot seat? And when a coach is reacting that rashly and abruptly in public at the reference of a hot seat, I'm going to start to wonder how they're acting in private as well. And then, yes, I have one more play. I'm going to stay in the state of Iowa. Iowa by 12 against Michigan State. I believe that is available still at Neg 110 at Bet Rivers. That's the primetime NBC game Saturday night. And it's not going to be very entertaining because Iowa's defense is going to score 14 points and Michigan State's offense is going to score 0. That's how this Michigan State is okay passing the ball. And it needs to be because it is so bad in early down success rate. It is one of the 30 worst teams in the country, no matter how you want to look at early down success rates. Michigan State puts itself in 3rd and long. You put yourself in 3rd and long against Iowa, it's a recipe for suffering. Iowa's going to find ways to make Michigan State capitulate in those moments, and that's going to be all it takes. Brian Ferentz, you need to score at least 40 in this game to get back on pace to keep your job. And while Parker might think that's all a psyop, this is a chance for the defense to give him a boost. I think at home with this defense, and we don't know where Michigan State's floor is, I'm very comfortable taking Iowa at 12. I'm very comfortable taking Iowa probably up to 2 touchdowns.
Okay, I like it. Michigan State, certainly a team to fade here. Not anyone that I'm interested in betting money on. I think the biggest thing for me is Noah Kim under pressure is just completely wilts, and I was going to be able to generate pressure here. So certainly a good play. I like it a whole lot. All right, let's get to the spicy one here at the end. A very fun one, I think.
Parker, what would make this one? You're gonna buy me a beer with like those brewed in tequila infused barrels, and therefore the beer you're gonna owe me because of this game is gonna have a little bit of spicy to it. I understand.
All the marbles come down to this one, basically, because both of these teams are way worse than I think either of us thought at the beginning of the season. We were talking about maybe a long shot to win the conference, and woof, things got extremely, extremely dark here. We've got Louisiana Tech.
You see the graphic
UTEP.
Producer Jacob has thrown on the screen. This is.
I love it. What? That's great work. That's very fun stuff. I'm glad. I'm just glad we wrote the beer bets down and remembered them, let alone have a graphic for the segment. That's a lot of fun. Louisiana Tech is at UTEP. That's Friday night. So I do have all 3 plays are weeknight plays for me. Douglas, you've got UTEP to win the CUSA plus 1100. Gonna go ahead and read a postmortem for that one. I think that one's probably out there, but I do believe that was a flyer. So that's what the purpose of the flyer is something interesting. I have a beer with you that Louisiana Tech's going to finish higher than UTEP in the CUSA. And the tiebreaker is head to head. So it would be really nice to have this one because who knows what these teams are going to look like in 4 weeks after more injuries and buyout factor and all of that hits. But I'm actually going to have an actual play on top of this and not just rooting for the beer bet here. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts about this game as well. I'm going to take Louisiana Tech plus 1.5, minus 115 at FanDuel right now. I have them favored outright, toss-up game, but I do have them favored, and I think the deciding factor is Louisiana Tech does two things well. They can pop off an explosive play, in theory, and looked like last week when they switched quarterbacks were able to generate some of that against Nebraska. And two, they're better on early downs than they are on late downs. They're 43rd in early downs EPA there. I think they have some kind of passing ceiling. UTEP has none. UTEP's going to run the ball a lot, 104th in rush rate over expected. And they're super inefficient at it, 113th in rush rate, or excuse me, in EPA per rush, 90th in rushing success rate on offense. I think Louisiana Tech with an explosive ceiling, a little bit good mojo coming out of, maybe the quarterback switch works a little bit better. Smoke Williams, I think, is really, really hard to defend. So I'm going to actually kind of double down on my beer bet here, and I'm going to say Louisiana Tech plus 1.5 is my play for this game. What about you on this game?
I like only one thing about this. I don't like any of it. There's only one thing I like about this. And it's that you were smart as you placed this bet. That was plus 105, neg 115 at FanDuel. You look across the rest of the market, it's plus one. You'd be looking at a pick 'em effectively the rest of the market. And that's because you, Parker Fleming, you know the easiest way to improve as a sports bettor is to use multiple sports books and always get the best odds. You and I, we recommend using an odds comparison tool like BetStamp. BetStamp.app/hitthebooks will help us look good while you get some help. BetStamp compares odds across every sportsbook for games, futures, player props, pretty much anything you can think of. It helps you get a better number like this plus 1.5 instead of plus one. Better odds. Neg 115, a 5-cent VIG on that extra hook is very much worth it. Download the app. There should be a link in the description. If you sign up through this page, it helps people know that we're kind of doing our job. And then you go look in the far corner of this where the beer bet graphic used to be. Far corner of this screen, there's a QR code which will help you quickly sign up for FanDuel and get that better number if you agree with Parker. I can't agree with Parker because I want this beer. We've got James in the comments saying, if you've got money on UTEP winning anything, he's got some beachfront property in Phoenix. Well, look, I saw The Last Man on Earth. There might be some beachfront property in Phoenix by the time all these things are said and done. In the meantime, the money I have on UTEP will be covered by the beer Parker's going to have to buy me because I have the home team in this game. And that was always why I had the flyer. I went back and listened to that clip from the summer about 20 minutes before we went on air just to refresh. What do I need to remember that I was so committed to? And I was committed to a veteran quarterback in Gavin Hardison who likes to chuck the ball even if his receivers can't catch it. And I was committing to a scheduling matrix advantage. And that scheduling matrix advantage included having this game at home. I will continue to believe you're going to have to buy me a second beer on the year. Give me a 2-0 lead on beer bets because UTEP has this game at home. I might have 3 plays today. I do have 3 plays today, but I care about nothing as much as I care about the UTEP Miners getting me a W Friday night.
Hey, gonna be high stakes. Very excited about that one. It's gonna be an awful football game, but I love having stakes on an awful football game. Should be a lot of
if anybody's curious, that game is 9 Eastern Friday night on CBS Sports Network. Utah and Oregon State might be playing at the same time, but Parker and I, our primary screens are going to be on CBS Sports Network.
Do I even have CBS Sports Network? I'm honestly not sure. I'm going to have to look and see. I will find a way to watch this game, though, whether it be some random website or I'm sure I have it on cable. All right, before we recap and get out of here, want to say thanks to everyone who's in here. Matt Gannon, Adam Reichert. Hope I did that right. Probably didn't. James S., new to the channel. Thanks for being in here. I appreciate you guys being in here helping us talk about college football every week. Go ahead.
I did note Matt Gannon, before the show began, he was calling this Louisiana Tech season. Clearly somebody who's watching the worst parts of our experience.
The Louisiana Tech Renaissance. Many people are talking about it. Douglas, what are your plays for this week? What do you got?
We've got Appalachian State by 13.5 at Louisiana Monroe. That's a belief in Appalachian State bouncing back from a bad beat and leaning on its run game against a woeful defense and an even worse offense. I've got Oklahoma by 19 against Iowa State. Oklahoma's defense is not yet appreciated. And as you pointed out, Parker, what a time to be alive. I'm crediting Oklahoma's defense. They shut teams down when it matters most. And Iowa State is a hit or miss kind of team that's not going to pull it off. And I've got Iowa by 11.5 against Michigan State. That is a belief in Iowa's defense shutting down Michigan State entirely and throughout. Ryan Fee points out, I misspoke. Appalachian State is on the road. Yeah, but it's Louisiana Monroe. Is it really on the road? Anyway, Iowa 11. Iowa's up to 12, I believe. My sheet here is wrong. Iowa 12, Michigan State. Iowa's defense is going to shut Michigan State down entirely, and that will be enough to get them a 12-point cover.
Awesome. I've got 3 plays as well. All of them are going to be on a weeknight. I'm going to go with Jacksonville State -6.5, -110 at Caesars Bet Rivers DK over Sam Houston State. I'm going to take BYU at home against Cincy -110. Excuse me. I've got Cincinnati not having played in altitude here, and BYU improving week over week. And then lastly, to double down on our beer bet, I'm going to go with Louisiana Tech +1.5. That's -115 at FanDuel. I know, look, you don't just walk into El Paso and steal a game, but the Bulldogs are ready. I'm gonna ride with them, and the beer Douglas is going to have to buy me is going to be ice cold and delicious. Douglas,
I will believe that when the clock hits zeros. Until then, it's going to go. I'm going to believe it's going to go like Grant Wells throwing 2 interceptions. Inevitable and always the case. Speaking of which, Grant Wells might be back this week. Keep an eye on Virginia Tech's line. And my last thought, folks, is it will be my mission for the rest of the week to find out the last time Cincinnati played at altitude. I will use that to break up writing and stretch my legs and just Google their schedule as far back as I have to go. I don't know what we define as at altitude. Is 3,000 feet high. I don't know what the number is, but I'm going to find it.
I love it. I tried, but I'm easily distractible and got bored. So we'll see what the result is. Make sure you follow Douglas on Twitter at @D_farmer. I am on Twitter at Stats of War. This has been Never Punt, Never Parlay, part of the Hammer Network and Hit the Books HQ. Make sure you like, subscribe, share the video, and we'll catch all of you next week.